Okay. So I think everyone is ready here. We started. Perfect. Just a quick reminder before everything, we are recording, and I suppose you clicked on an OK button at the very beginning that everything is recorded. And I guess in a few seconds we can start. I'm just waiting for people to join so that we are all ready here. Just a few more seconds and we can go. We are already in a very good shape, I would say. We are 45 already registered and online right now. So I guess we can start. So once again, hello everybody, and thank you for coming today. I'm Christina Fasca. I'm from the Pisto Alliance. Many of you maybe already know the Pisto Alliance. We are a non-for-profit organization already back from 2009, and it was organized by 4 pharmas that found themselves challenged by the same, let's say, problematics and on the same wavelength of pre-competition research and development. These pharmas are Pfizer, Novartis, GSK. There's just 3 of the biggest ones. And today, after 15 years ongoing, we are working with 200 pharmas on the life science, let's say, area. My role in the Pisto Alliance is the one to engage members with the other members of the Pisto Alliance, with you, like we are here on this webinar stage in this case. And what we are trying to do is to let's say, have relevant demonstration on how collaboration in pre-competitive world can bring great results. Now, regarding this, today we are going to discuss a very challenging argument, large language models, and how we believe this is going to reshape the future. I think we are already a little bit one step in the future, but today we are also going to hear some use cases on how to make this work in a better way. From wonderful companies you see here, from Metaphacts, Scibite, the Hyve, IQVIA, and Ontoforce. Now, I will make a round of introduction to each one of you. I will start with Peter. Peter Haase from Metaphacts. Would you like to just say very quickly your introduction? Your microphone, Peter.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Peter Haase is my name. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at Metaphacts. Metaphacts since last year is a part of Digital Science Group. And yeah, so generally what I'm interested in is this area of neurosymbolic integration. So how can we combine the capabilities of generative AI, so specifically here LLMs, with that of knowledge graphs. So traditionally, Metaphacts has been a knowledge graph company. We're active in that space. Together with Digital Science, have built a large knowledge graph covering the scientific domain with a lot of applications, in particular in the pharmaceutical sector. And the use case that I will be talking about is in the area how we utilize LLMs for these purposes. Thanks. I think Christina is.
Thank you, Peter. My microphone was frozen. I will go to Joe. I just see you as I see you on my screen, actually. So I'll just go to Joe now.
Yep, thank you very much, Christina. So my name is Joe. I lead the data science and professional services team at Scibite. Scibite is a software organization that specializes in technology and expertise, acquired a few years back by Elsevier, who provide gold standard and high quality data. And so you can see the kind of alignment there. What we do at Scibite is we help customers get as much value as possible from their data. And my team in particular, as part of the data science and the professional services team, shows customers how they can make use of the components and offerings of our software alongside potentially bespoke solutions to help provide answers to their problems. And so we often make use of additional technologies, the latest and the greatest, to help us deliver against these problems. And obviously, generative AI and LLMs fit within that space as well. So happy to talk to you about some of the areas that we've been applying LLMs to in today's discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Michael, I go next to you.
All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Michael Vanhoutte. I'm the VP Engineering at Ontoforce. So for those who don't know Ontoforce, Ontoforce is a Belgium-based product development company, and we develop a software product that is specifically tailored for life science. Our product allows our customers to build a knowledge discovery platform, allowing their researchers to really ask research questions during the development of their drugs, for example, really accelerating the development of that. And how we do that is we notice that our customers really struggle right now with all that data being in different silos. And with the Discover product, we bring all these sources together and make them directly to a researcher. So my role within the engineering team is I'm VP Engineering, so that means that I lead the development team. So my focus there is for a large part on the changing requirements and expectations of our customers, focusing on usability, on scalability, on public data, and obviously also on things like large language models and artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Michael. Jay from IQVIA, Jay Nanavati from IQVIA.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jay. I lead our advanced NLP methods at IQVIA. IQVIA has a rich history of doing state-of-the-art NLP, serving both healthcare and life sciences use cases. In healthcare, I can talk about how we're using LLMs to augment our deterministic AI offering to really enable robust EHR data analysis and extremely highly complex and diverse data sets. In life sciences, we're looking to leverage LLMs to provide more natural ways for users to query vast amounts of data sets and also grounding them, for example, using ontologies and hybrid document retrieval. So I'm happy to talk to you about those also. On the R&D side, we're really looking to tackle foundational problems with LLMs and to accelerate the value for our partners. So this really fits nicely in the topic for today's talk.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. I left, let's say, Wouter for the last one, but I will also start with you with the use case. Just one last comment, Wouter, before I start. I would like to inform everyone that you have the question button on your, I think it's right-hand side. I invite you to ask questions while we are going to start with the use cases, and I'll make sure everyone will answer it during this session. Thank you. Wouter, to you.
Yes, thank you, Christina, and welcome everyone. My name is Wouter Franke, strategic data consultant at the Hyve. At the Hyve, we work a lot with data collaborations, so organizations working together to get the best value out of their data. And that means that we both advise them on how to set it up, but also a lot around the data engineering services and modeling. And on the other side, we work a lot with open source products. We help develop them and implement them in different organizations. And we see large language models as a great way to increase efficiency in these kind of data collaborations. And around it, we do a lot around making sure that data is available also for the large language models and actually how to make them applicable within your organization.
Perfect. Now I have to add one very interesting thing about you, that you've been helping the Dutch Healthcare Institute design and implement a solution based on LLMs to augment quality information within healthcare. And I believe today you're going to discuss exactly about this one and introduce the responsible AI solution for this major project. And if I'm not wrong, you believe that also the successful data use requires addressing legal and ethical consideration. Now, if you don't mind, Wouter, we would like to hear more about that. So I will start with the use cases from your side, and then we continue with each one of you.
Yeah. And to tell a little bit more about the use case, it's within the Dutch long-term healthcare. And in the past few years, we run a large program to address the problem around structural data, making sure data is available and can be used for research purposes. But obviously that leaves out a large chunk of the data which is unstructured. So while we've used NLP in the past, that didn't necessarily address the full solution, but with the upcoming large language models, it gives another handle to say, hey, we can actually start using unstructured data as well. So basically what we implemented at the Dutch Healthcare Institute is a retrieval augmented generation tool, RAG-based implementation of large language models, which uses a lot of the unstructured data around quality of care, ranging from websites to articles to formal documentation they have to actually provide to the government, and use that as a basics to answer different questions than you would get from the more structural data. As with your question, yes, it's a governmental organization, a governmental run program. So responsible AI is important there. AI in general terms is quite often seen as something which is a black box, isn't transparent, it's hard to use, doesn't give the right answers. So making sure there's a traceability to it, making sure there's a framework of saying, hey, but what's the background of the documentation? Can we rely on vetted data which comes into the model, but also legal concerns in terms of copyright, property of data, and responsibility of any advisor, any follow-up actions taken on basis on answers that you got from a large language model is an important element. So we're working there, for example, with the Dutch state attorney to make sure we've got a tool which makes as responsible use of these kind of new technologies as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, just to hear a little bit more about that, how can we ensure that KJs and LLMs used in healthcare are free from biases that could lead to unequal or inaccurate patient outcomes? Could you tell us something about this side?
Yes, I think trying to go to make sure there's no bias at all is an unrealistic ambition. Every data has its biases. So in the end, any answer basis on a large language model might have a bias as well. But I think in these kind of cases, it's really important, just as you would do with any research, is to make transparent what is the basis of your answers. So have a traceability of any potential biases and be aware of it, more than trying to obviously try to reduce the number of biases, but getting rid of them is a unrealistic dream as far as I'm concerned. So what we've done in the use case is really make it traceable in terms of what are you doing, what's the conversation that you actually had, being able to save that, being able to store that in a manner that it's really traceable and can't be changed afterwards. So you have a proof of what you've done, a proof of this is basically how my bias, I've dealt with my biases in my answers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I was just checking if we have any questions on this. I remind you that you can ask Wouter and any one of our speakers today in the question button on your right-hand side, or also in the chat window if you would like to. We can see everyone's question box. I would go on, and I invite Joe Mullen from Scibite to give us his use case. He will discuss the Scibite chat, a system that uses advanced ontology-based information retrieval and AI to allow users to have natural conversation with the scientific data. I believe this is a very specific approach, and I invite Joe to tell us more about it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christina. And also leading on from the last use case, I think this folds in quite nicely. So yes, we've recently launched Scibite Chat, which is essentially a chat module that sits atop of our semantic search capability. And it allows for users to have natural language conversations with their data, ultimately lowering that barrier of entry and, as we all try to do within life sciences, particularly in the drug development process, expediting that extraction of insight. To the previous comments as well, it's important within life science to have this kind of evidence-based decision-making, where we know that wrong decisions can have dire consequences. And so being able to understand how a system has generated an answer and from where this answer was extracted is absolutely vital. So to this end, Scibite Chat makes use of a RAG-based architecture, which, as we all know, is only as good as the information retrieval component. So that is the ability for the system or for the process to identify the most accurate and relevant candidate information to send to the LLM to generate any answer. And because it's Scibite, we focus on making data better in a kind of ontology-first approach. So we do that by building a top of existing domain knowledge that are captured in these ontologies. And we take those ontologies and we kind of operationalize them. What we mean by that is we enrich them so that it can be used for the purposes of NER or named entity recognition, or indeed markup of unstructured textual data. And we do that using our deep domain expertise. We have a great team of expert curators that have spent a great deal of time manipulating these ontologies for the purpose of NER, adding additional synonyms, rules, and context, etc., to ensure that true positives remain as high as possible. And we use these supercharged ontologies to mark up data, predominantly unstructured to textual data, and load this into our semantic search index, Scibite search. We then use a heuristic for converting natural language to our human explainable semantic query. And we run that against our marked up corpus, identifying documents that match these queries, supporting this idea of traceability, transparency, and accurate information retrieval. We then send these original, these kind of document candidates along with the original question to the LLM for answer generation, and the user's presented back with answers, but also importantly the evidence, the documents that we used to generate the answer, and even the snippets of the specific document that were of relevance to the answer as well. And ultimately we believe that Scibite Chat is bridging that gap between what we call commoditized LLMs that you can hit at a cost against an API, and domain expertise that's captured in these ontologies. And Scibite and Chat also, I think it's important to mention, it complies with the responsible AI principles that have been defined by our RELX, our parent company. And I think it's a really good application of, or demonstration of responsible AI, and a pragmatic application of generative AI in the world that we all play. I think we've also been actively looking at LMs for knowledge graph generation, which I know is a topic a lot of people are covering or sitting on today, particularly in that context of relation extraction, and also lowering the barrier of entry for querying against that knowledge graph. We've also done a little bit of work looking at how we can potentially use LMs to help support our curation team in extending these ontologies, and potentially looking at synthetic data generation to train more bespoke operationalizable models. And with that, I'll be quiet.
You won't be quiet, because I would like to ask you, how do you actually handle the privacy concerns? Like, how can one extend Scibite Chat to their own, let's say, world, to their own language?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment, we're evaluating Scibite Chat with some existing customers with a kind of default or limited set of quality, I should say, data coming from our parent organization, and an out-of-the-box set of ontologies. But because our chat module is built atop of our semantic search capability, there's no reason why we can't make use of some of those foundational components that are captured in there, such as data connectors, so being able to load data in from a variety of different sources, whether that be from an S3 bucket with your own data on it, or a file connector. You can also extend that system to look at your own ontologies, whether that be internal standards, for example, product lists, or even extending existing public standards to include internal IDs for things like targets or compound or whatever else you're looking at as well. And because the system that supports Scibite Chat has this concept of login and user preference as well, we also deal with a lot of that kind of privacy and permission issues as well. So certain users can have access to certain data in the underlying semantic search platform, and those permissions persist through to that chat system as well. And so we have that ability to be able to restrict who can see or chat with what data is available to them within the system. And obviously in terms of the kind of the LM that we make use of within that system, at the moment we're throwing that out, or we're using our Azure subscription, which we all know is about as secure as you can get in terms of not sharing any data with OpenAI and others. And I think it's also important to understand that particularly within the health space or other spaces, we are looking at how we can get certification in terms of ISO and other certifications on top of Scibite Chat in the future as well. So I think there's a huge scope for, you know, taking that system and extending it to your view of the world, and, you know, including your own data and your ontologies. But there's a journey for us to go on before we get to that completely.
Thank you very much. We have some questions starting to come. If you don't mind, I will go on with the use cases, and then we can start the Q&A. In the meantime, maybe some of the answers will be already answered during the chat window. Now, I will go on to Peter from Metaphacts. Peter has a long history in semantic web and knowledge graph community, as his first contact with the semantic technologies dates back to 25 years. He founded then Metaphacts, and he focused on enterprise knowledge graphs. Now, the use case today will be LLMs in scientific knowledge graphs, like the Dimensions knowledge graph, to aid scientific discovery and research. Peter, to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, and yeah, with that history that I have in knowledge graphs, so really I see a lot of potential. What is currently happening with LLMs? I would like to share a bit of use cases that we have in that direction. In a way, they're similar to the ones that we just heard about in terms of direction and how we utilize LLMs. But still, I want to provide some further insights to our perspective. So the use case that I want to talk about is how we use LLMs as intelligent assistants to support scientific discovery and research workflows, and there, in particular, how we use this combination of LLMs and knowledge graph. So basically combining the capabilities of generative AI with those of symbolic knowledge documentation. And this use case is situated in what we're doing with Metaphacts at Digital Science with our solutions for research support. And then we have built this Dimensions knowledge graph, which we recently launched. And that is a large knowledge graph covering the entire R&D landscape. We have 30 billion facts from research publications, grants, patents, clinical trials. But that knowledge is also integrated with data from the public domain and also allows to connect private enterprise data sources into that knowledge graph. And what do we do with LLMs here? So we primarily use LLMs as an interface for the researcher to interact with that knowledge and to support individual steps in the R&D workflow. And to make that a bit more concrete, a specific use case that we have in the pharmaceutical domain is that of hypothesis generation and target discovery. So the questions here are around what is already known about a potential target in existing research knowledge, but also what is not known yet, but potentially interesting, and how can we provide evidence for that. And yeah, relevant knowledge here, publications about possible targets, public databases, for example, about known gene disease associations, protein interaction, and so on. And then the individual specific tasks that we support are tasks like a query for what is known in public databases about possible targets, and the associations and the actions. And what we do here is provide a translation of such natural language queries through LLMs to structured queries over that integrated knowledge graph that brings together the knowledge from the relevant sources and gives you also really precise structured answers with provenance to the original source databases and with a connection to the relevant publications. And then you might want to go for further analysis. You may want to ask questions about the specific publications. And here we also utilize LLMs to summarize publications in natural language, use LLMs for the targeted extraction of relevant facts and relations from unstructured publications, similar to what we've heard before. But then you also have these kind of questions about what is not known yet. So starting out from known knowledge, can we make predictions about what might be the case and to infer what is statistically likely, for example, about the associations of gene and disease? And here we really can utilize the generative elements of AI to generate hypotheses, but then also ground these hypotheses in what is already known in the knowledge graph. So in summary, the idea is that LLM-based assistants provide very specific capabilities for individual tasks, and then we can really realize a hybrid intelligence of a human researcher and an LLM in such collaborative workflows.
Peter, we have here Vikal that is right on spot, and he's asking us, can we trust LLMs when we have such a huge challenge of reproducibility?
Yeah, of course you cannot trust the alone, right? So I mean, that's the whole point of this neurosymbolic integration that we're utilizing here, that we're utilizing the capabilities of an LLM in terms of the general knowledge that we have there, natural language understanding, complement that with really explicitly represented knowledge in the knowledge graph. Yeah? So really the basic idea is that we utilize the LLM as an interface, but the answers that we generate are really grounded in trustworthy knowledge, so that we can really build reliable applications and give reliable answers, really with provenance chain back to down to the individual sources where the knowledge was derived from. And yes, so we have that, but we also then have these capabilities really of the generative capabilities of deriving new insights based on what is already explicitly known.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. I will go now. Sorry, I was checking my microphone. I'll go now to Jay. Jay is the head of advanced NLP at IQVIA, and he's responsible for driving thought leadership and go-to-market strategies through research centered on the latest developments in LLMs. Now, the use case of today is going to be the use of LLMs in healthcare and life sciences, focusing on augmenting deterministic AI, acquiring vast data sets and solving foundational problems to accelerate value for partners. Jay, how would you disseminate this with us?
Yeah, sure. So Christina, what we're really looking to do at IQVIA is using LLMs to deliver healthcare-grade AI. And that, what that really means is the whole comprehensive view of AI, in that we look to augment LLMs with the best tools in our toolkits. And one of those tools is deterministic AI. So at IQVIA NLP, we have a massive content store covering not just life sciences, but also regulatory and med affairs. And what we are using LLMs is to essentially augment this to result in more deterministic, but at the same time more scalable inference. So some of the tasks that we're looking at using LLMs for are entity detection, information extraction, sort of clustering, sentiment analysis, but also leveraging now the generative capabilities to perform summarization and question answering. So specifically, one of the on the life sciences side, one of the key innovations we're doing is to combine the semantic understanding capabilities of LLMs with the rich ontological domain knowledge that we have and we've built across numerous years, and sort of collated that sort of grounded knowledge. And what we're doing is actually going beyond what others might be doing, which is sort of RAG and sort of in context learning. What we're really trying to do is to infuse this ontological knowledge into LLMs to really deliver highly robust, controllable, and high-performing predictions and sort of generations from LLMs. And we've actually recently shared our findings in a paper that I'm happy to share afterwards on this. Now, furthermore, on sort of the R&D side with LLMs, we're really, going back to healthcare-grade AI, we're focused on making LLMs more interpretable, more robust prompting methods, as well as sort of, when you think about deploying LLMs, we're looking to make LLMs more aligned and sort of automated safeguarding for these LLMs against attacks. So yeah, that's how we're using LLMs across life sciences and healthcare to really deliver healthcare-grade AI, but augmenting it with sort of the existing proven capabilities that we have.
And Jay, what would be the risk in deploying LLMs in healthcare settings, and how would you alleviate at scale?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects about LLMs is that they can be really quite non-deterministic. So unlike, say, a classification model, which you can guarantee some sort of precision recall and some sort of generalized performance, if you have an LLM which is deployed, for example, like a chatbot, it's really difficult to guarantee any sort of generalized abilities of that LLM. There can be sort of edge cases and some kind of edge ways people can attack that LLM. So one of the innovative approaches that we're building is automating scalable safeguarding of LLMs. So we're using techniques such as adversarial learning to take any, to support any LLM and attack that LLM, and then automatically devise new guidelines and approaches to guardrail that LLM. So when it's deployed in the real setting, say suppose in healthcare as a medical chatbot, we can actually guarantee generalized abilities and performance guarantees for that LLM.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have a question here from Srikant. Is there a best practices guideline for building knowledge graph from unstructured data like PubMed? And if any of us have any reference that we could share. Now I start with you, Jay, but I think I would make a round of answers from everyone on the stage.
Yeah, so extracting knowledge graphs is I believe that's what, it's all about, entities and relationships, and LLMs are, one tool for the job, but, non-generative models are still very highly performant. PubMed BERT is highly ranked in, for example, life sciences. Some of the best practices would be around, if you're looking at generative models, would be around robust prompting. So it's often very hard to understand if you're prompting the model right, or if you have if you have the right prompts for a given data set. And it often is very time consuming and even it's very costly to build sort of the right prompts. So yeah, it would be a good starting point would be to essentially use, for example, declarative prompting techniques to streamline that part of LLM interaction to extract knowledge.
Thank you very much, Jay. I would move to Mike, our last use case, and then I think I will go back to some of the very interesting questions that we are receiving right now. Michael Vanhoutte, he's the VP Engineering of Ontoforce, and he's the responsible of the Discover product, and also the leader of the team that is developing it. The use case of today will be to discuss the breakthrough knowledge graph usability and how this product, Discover 7, allows scientists to use plain English to explore their data and gain valuable insights, all while maintaining the accuracy and traceability that's essential for reliable research. I think we are all going to talk about the reliable research a little bit today. Michael, to you.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this actually, what I'm going to be sharing a little bit actually links also to what Joe explained around, I believe he was using RAG and pointing to the use of correct data and how to ensure that the results are correct. Peter also referred to that when linking to a knowledge graph. So what we are doing within Discover, maybe just a quick recap. So Discover is a knowledge discovery platform built exclusively for life science. So really our customers are going to be pharma customers typically, or biotech companies who have researchers who need to do answer research questions, and they will typically struggle with that because of the vast amount of data sources that they have. What Discover does is we bring all that information together and make it available to them through a knowledge graph that is that they can access through a user interface. So this is an area that we have been working on for a number of years, and we have a strong product on that. We invest heavily there on usability, on the user experience, on making sure that we make it as simple as possible. But what we do notice is sometimes people do get stuck with what we call this blank page problem. No matter how simple you try to create a user interface, people will always find it difficult to just start something. Remember the feeling that when you're looking at an empty Word document, it's quite similar. The writing the first sentence is the most difficult one. So using large language models, we really want to try to solve that blank page problem. So what we're going to be releasing with Discover 7 this summer is a Discover Assistant. And one of the capabilities in Discover Assistant is to do exactly that, to ask a natural language query, which will then give you answers from your knowledge graph so that you can continue your research there. Now, as Joe mentioned, the main problem to solve there are things like making sure that we are reproducible, making sure that the answer is explainable, is traceable, that it's free of hallucinations, because obviously you don't want to make $1 million research decision based on hallucinated data or based on data that was invented. That would be, not an ideal day. So how we solve that? In our case, we didn't use RAG, and it's in fact a nice example of how these different technologies really can be used in many different ways. What we decided to do was we wanted to prevent hallucinations and have the full traceability there completely by just not searching in a large language model at all. What we wanted to do is we use a large language model that we use to translate the query into a Discover query, and we will in fact query the Discover knowledge graph for you. So there's a number of advantages to that, in the sense that it completely eliminates hallucinations, and you have the full reproducibility and the full data lineage because you're just querying your knowledge graph. You can see the exact query that you're executing because you have the query in front of you, but it also is a cheaper solution to set up, because that means that you don't have to train all your private data in your large language model. You just need sufficient information in your large language model to understand your question and link that to the knowledge graph. So that kind of links back to one or two of the main challenges that we faced in the development of that. I think the two main challenges that we had to solve was, how can we translate words that were typed in a natural language sentence, and how can we map that to the right entities in your knowledge graph, because the knowledge graph is completely defined by the customer and can go in containing hundreds of nodes and entities in many different directions. And also, how do we measure reliability of what we develop? And those are two areas where we invested heavily in and got to a point where this summer this will lead to a release of Discover 7.
Mike, you were talking about hallucinations, and I think this is right on spot because it tackles a little bit all of our use cases. How are we going to understand the good and the bad ones when we're talking about generative AI and scientific discovery? And I would open the stage to everyone for this question.
Yeah, so this is really an area that you need to take into account in your design, and it can have some weird design consequences at times. I'll give you one very concrete example. As part of the Discover system natural language capabilities, we built a test set of a few thousand queries that we continuously test against to really make sure that the system is working fine. And one of the things that we realized is that we try to build the right Discover query using large language models for all of these tests. And for example, in I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 65% of the situations, we can build the perfect query with the first hit. And we have in 68% of the cases, for example, the perfect query with the first top 3 hits. Now, you could say that based on the difference in those statistics, that you can simply show the top 1. But in this case, we specifically decided to also show the top 3 because we wanted to prevent users from having that feeling that this is 100% correct. And our feeling was by just showing a single answer, by showing a single response, you give the impression of a higher sense of reliability that may be in the system. And by just showing the top 3, it immediately sets a different mindset with people, and they will look at those answers differently and be more aware of, for example, the impact of hallucinations.
Maybe to add on that, Michael, I think it's absolutely. I think we all believe that there's a responsibility of the user in validating any answer the large language model gives, and the idea of giving 3 potential answers to already set someone in the mindset of saying, I have to actually validate this question. And also in terms of responsible use, that's an important one, because otherwise you might start thinking, I get one answer, I validate it, but if it's right in 90-95% of the time, I might actually start to become lazy and just say, hey, continue, that's it, that's the correct answer. And these kind of ways are actually to motivate a user, or nudge a user in terms of validating any answer, I think is a correct way of making sure that a large language model at the moment, with the level of hallucination that's potentially still there, is best used.
Yeah, if I can add to that, what I think what any intelligent information system has to provide is a clear reference to or an explanation of how the answer was generated, and that might be the answer was generated by through a query over an explicitly represented knowledge base. But it might also be that a useful answer is determined through the general knowledge contained in a large language model, or actually some kind of inference that is based on either known knowledge or inferred knowledge. That has to be very transparent, and there are different use cases for each of those. Yes, in some cases you really just want to have known facts. In other cases, you do want to get into the realm of really generating answers and possibly generating hypotheses, really in the discourse of a scientific discovery. But it always has to be clear on what level we are operating, what kind of question we are asking, and where and how the answer was derived from.
And I think it also comes down to making sure that you have good quality data to capture the knowns as well, to understand what the diff is between the knowns and the potential hallucinations that could be, new hypotheses. And I think this comes back a little bit to what you were talking about, Peter, before, which is, that kind of neurosymbolic AI where you want to be able to see or map potential hallucinations to something that could be then aligned to, for example, a knowledge graph for you to try and reverse engineer the known facts at the top of the hypotheses and see what you've got in terms of evidence and whether or not it is something that you want to persevere with or not.
Yeah, just to add there, I guess a key trade-off here is between scalability and accuracy. So, obviously we want the scale of a human, but an accuracy, scale of a machine, but an accuracy of a human, which is hard to achieve. And I guess something important is how do we look to distill this sort of detection of hallucination into machines, and what we found is actually LLMs can be really good evaluators themselves, and we've tried, for example, for benchmarking summarization. If you have a summary, you can actually fit an LLM to generate questions in order to detect hallucinations on those summaries, and similarly reward models to detect hallucination and also assign confidence to LLM output. So I think when we're thinking about this, it's important to sort of find a balance, because of course, we can write queries and create test suites, but they don't cover all the potential edge cases and are not, very intensive, human intensive. That's also a key consideration here.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone. I will go a little bit back on Anton Heist, that is asking us who is using the Wolfram language and Wolfram's plugin to OpenAI development. Would someone answer this question, please?
So we are currently not using that. I would still like to answer that question, because I really think there's a lot of potential in that. And we talked about knowledge infusion, but I think there's a huge potential also in extending LLMs with other kinds of capabilities. So on the one hand, there's the ability to talk to or query an explicitly represented knowledge base. That's one kind of capability. But the capability to also access computational knowledge, like through Wolfram Alpha, it just expands the capabilities of an LLM even further. And what I really see there coming is that we develop LLMs towards that we equip them with a kind of agency, that they really understand what is a particular intent of a user and how can we map that to specific capabilities, services, tools that the LLM should be able to access and work with. And there, I think that there's huge potential when we think about really intelligent assistants, combining what we have in the LLM already pre-trained with access to external knowledge, external services, computations like Wolfram Alpha, etc. So once we really have that comprehensively covered, we can really build a truly hybrid intelligence system.
Thank you very much, Peter. Anyone else would like to join the answer here?
I mean, just to kind of reiterate some of the stuff that Peter said, it's a fantastic example of including an additional tool that you could potentially include in a more kind of autonomous agent, and looking at all of the extra kind of tools that you could pull in, whether that be interacting with a Sparkle endpoint, whether that be retrieving or converting a natural language query to Cypher for Neo4j retrieval, pulling in these tools into kind of more autonomous agents that have higher level tasks to complete is something that's really interesting. And I think that a lot more people are going to be starting to focus on them on the back of kind of successful applications of RAG architecture and chat interfaces as well. So I think that's kind of something we'll be looking at in the future as well.
Thank you, Joe. And since you're here, and regarding the Scibite chat, we had a question earlier today from Peter Dorr saying if you think that the experts or the casual users will be the main users group of the Scibite chat.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So the underlying semantic search platform, Scibite Search, is an index that you can query with a declarative query language. It's a little bit like Cypher, but it's more specific for the search system, and that's more predominantly hit with data scientists. They understand how to develop these queries for really specifically identifying snippets of text. You can also use the API, you can use the UI, blah, blah, blah. The point is that the index in this underlying tool, the Scibite Search, can be hit by a variety of personas. Now, by adding that interactive or that natural language module on top of that, you can imagine that being an additional persona that maybe wasn't previously able to access or take advantage of that semantic index that's captured within the tool. So we probably see that being more, people that want to interact with data, but maybe have not got to deal with that technical debt of understanding some of the complexities that may arise of getting their head around the declarative query language. But this is something we're actually reviewing right now. We're getting this into the hands of customers, and we're seeing what kinds of personas are actually making use of that chat interface, and I'll be really keen to see what the results of that are. Now, as a data scientist, I would probably use the chat interface to get me so far. But the great thing about our chat interface is you can see at every point the query that was developed to actually identify the relevant documents. I would personally be going back in and running that myself to understand exactly what was going on behind the scenes. So it'd be interesting to see how different people's interactions with the tools roll out. Everybody's ways and expectations of interacting with technology is slightly different now because of generative AI. Everybody expects a different user experience. And that's something that we're kind of playing with at the moment as well.
Thank you, Joe. I've also put the link to Scibite chat in the question area, if for anyone who would like to go a little bit further with that. A question to Wouter from the Hyve, from Franke. How do you see the uptake of the LLM healthcare realm?
I think it's very, you see different, large language models is a broad spectrum of tools and applications. So I think in almost everyone's daily life, we use things like ChatGPT or other ways to speed up your own processes. But if you really talk about healthcare, the natural language processing is getting more and more important, and it could be in the area of transcripting whatever's being said in a discussion with a patient, immediately summarizing it, maybe even translating into a patient summary, and in that regards, really making the process of a doctor more efficient. You see, it's and we definitely see a lot of tryouts, pilots around these kind of things, pre-production, but where they're really starting to look at the more efficient way of working. A lot of the solution that we talked today about around the RAG-based solutions, they are really being used in research or research type of activities. So you see them in unlocking unstructured data. You see them connecting more unstructured data with very structured data in combination with knowledge graphs. So that's another area where we see a lot of the large language models. And I do believe that area is more at the moment within the research area of healthcare. So healthcare not being one market, I think there's a place for a lot of different things. And I think the main element you see everywhere there is it forms an efficiency of your daily work. The data scientist or the data researcher was able to actually really have an easier job of going through all of the documents to find the relevant articles. Like I said, a doctor really being able to capture the essence of a conversation with a patient and immediately being able to send a letter to him. Those are really the efficiency gains that at the moment, I'm really making a difference for professionals within the healthcare market. And I'm quite positive about the future uptake of it as well.
Thank you. We have a very interesting question regarding the cost. So there will be how to manage the cost of the large language models. I think there was Michael who was mentioning something about how to find it in a cheaper way. And specifically, I see here that Melissa is making a connection to how to help the researchers, let's say, to have the ability to process raw genomic data with the LLMs. So back to the question, how do we manage the cost of LLMs today? Michael, I will start with you.
All right. So this is a big topic, and there's a few different angles that need to be taken into account. I think if we look back like 18 months or so ago when ChatGPT was first brought to the world, at that point in time, people were saying things like this will eliminate all databases and everything's going to become this technology. At some point in time, it really became, the expression, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. At some point in time, it became like the solution for everything out there. And I'll be honest, when we designed Discover 7, for example, we're working on the Discover Assistant, we also fell in that trap. There were different steps that we had to take, where at first we really wanted to use the large language model for this, and we're going to be doing that with the large language model. And we ended up with an experience that took like 45 seconds to perform one query at one point in time during our development. And then when you start really looking at it, you start to realize but I shouldn't use the large language model for this step. I can do this better myself. I can use a different technology for that. And I think that's one critical aspect in cost as well, is just don't use it for everything. Use it for those areas where it really can make a difference. And there's a lot of value in other technologies as well. And continue to use them, because an LLM is extremely expensive. People say that it's 25 more expensive than a Google, 25 times more expensive than a Google query to search ChatGPT. That's cost that you're going to have to pay as well when you run your own queries. And those are things that you're going to have to take into account.
Thank you, Michael. Jay, sorry, Wouter, yes, you want to add
maybe
something?
Take one different angle on this as well. Costs. Obviously, there are costs with the use of any large language model. And they need to be in balance with the benefits. And I think the benefits really are in making life easier, making more efficient use of your time. So while cost is an important component, and I think there's a lot of work going on to actually reduce the costs, and with that also the performance of large language models, it also it should be taken into account that it actually provides quite a few benefits to organizations, to individuals as well. And as long as that's in balance, I'm not afraid that cost will be any prohibitive factor in running large language models or utilizing large language models.
Can I also add to that as well, just really quickly, because I think what Michael said was, I agree with, operationalization in terms of costs. Yes, they are going to come down. We can see that they've dramatically come down in the last year or so, the last few years. But I do think that, it is very important to understand the problem that you're trying to address more so than coming straight in with the solution and looking for where you can hammer. I think that's a really valid point. I think everybody should be thinking in that way. So completely agree with that. But also, when we talk about costs, it's not just kind of monetary costs here. We're talking about environmental costs and other things as well that should also be taken into consideration. I think that if you look at some of the calculations as to how much kind of environmental cost there is in CO2 in terms of making use of some of these models, we can't ignore some of those components as well. Again, they will probably come down. You've got things like quantization and other kind of methodologies that are kind of going to bring that down. But I do think that's something that we can't ignore. But just to kind of reiterate Michael's point, I do think it's really important to understand the problem and not get into this kind of framework where as soon as a problem comes to you, you say, okay, what LLM can provide me with the answer, as opposed to then looking at other technologies that could potentially also help you in building the satisfactory solution.
Thank you very much, Joe. Jay, would you add something about this, please, as well?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Wouter and Joe here that LLMs might not be the best tool for all jobs, both in terms of cost and scale, and also performance. So it's important to make right decisions in terms of not jumping to LLMs, indeed. But I guess the cost are sort of in two aspects. One is inference. I think we talked about that, and that can be reduced, through optimizing how you interact with LLMs, especially at scale. So that's definitely one of those aspects. But the other is also about training and fine tuning. So more and more, you might not be able to get what you want out of LLMs by just prompting, and you might want to fine tune them, and that is expensive. And something to consider there is, can we utilize open source models? And also, when you're looking at these models, you might not really want, a full 7 billion parameter models. Recently, for example, Microsoft has released fee models, which are about, 1-2 billion parameters. So it's sort of thinking about, if you want to use LLMs, can you try and use domain-specific LLMs, which might be smaller, but be more cost-effective and more reliable.
Thank you, Jay. Couldn't agree more on that. We are in the last 4 minutes, just a very roundup. I want to thank the Hyve because they were the one putting this together. But specifically, I think this is a demonstration on how we can, and all of us can put together a group of experts around a certain argument, and LLMs certainly is one of the best one. I am leaving everyone with a few links about what we were discussing today. So if anyone would like to dive a little bit deeper into each one of the use cases, I'm leaving you here with a few of them. I will add now Metaphacts as well. And if there are some questions left, I think there are a couple of them. If we cannot manage to answer them now, I just would like to remind you there is an email that somebody's going to type it here from the Hyve, where they are going to help answer each one of the questions. Now, there was one left that I think I didn't answer just yet. It was Melissa asking, what is the most challenging and critical aspect to consider in the implementation of LLMs, specifically related to current business practices? Wouter, would you close this up?
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time, Christina?
The most challenging and critical aspect to consider in the implementation of LLMs, specifically related to business practices.
I think an important one is, and I think we've heard it a couple of times, it's quite a few large language models are based upon a certain set of documentation, certain set of data. So we add in the context of any large language models. So in any business practice, looking at what do you expect to get out of your large language model, and how do we curate, how do we make sure that your basis for any large language model is the right basis for your answers as well. Because I think in every example, every use case that we've heard, just using ChatGPT to get a question answer, it's not enough. You really need that basis of a data set, prompt engineering. So these professional services around a large language model, any solutions, are very important to make a correct use of the large language models. And in addition to it, quite often you need to think about the other aspects of reliability, transparency of anything you generated with the large language model. And I think that's also a very important component if you look at best practices for any business, to really look at how do we implement it and what's the best way to get the value out of the large language models, while still taking into account the difficulty sometimes with hallucinations or the fact that it's a black box.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I think we reached the top of the hour. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Wouter, Mike, Jay. This was wonderful. We are going to answer remaining questions if there is some. But in the meantime, I would like to thank everyone who remained until the end and also who had interest about our subject. I hope we can prolong this with the second webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.